Okay. So Wally, I've been talking to some people in the Indian community, and it turns out you actually have a long family history in the Indian world.
Yeah, I mean, actually, it was my grandfather. He grew up and, got into motorcycling very early age, and he raced and hill climbed in Springfield, Massachusetts.
That's so cool. Wow.
Yeah, and he did a lot of different jobs there. During World War II, they did a lot of development on tire testings. He worked in R&D. He managed the racing division, and then towards the end of his career, he was the service manager for the factory, if you will, and he started working on these verticals when they came out because kind of rushed them through production, and there was a lot of issues to work through. And so for me personally, I always followed along with that, later on, and interested in these Indian verticals, although they're kind of like the redheaded stepchild of the Indian world. But there's a bunch of us that still love them.
My grandfather, like all these things he wanted to fix, we should have fixed them when we had the chance.
Yeah, and then ultimately, they went out of business in 1953, so it never happened.
What is it that the bike that put Indian out of business was the Scout or something?
And of course, like there's always more to the story, right? If you really get into the details, but yes.
Of course, I found this one on Marketplace. I picked it up, and I've been learning a little bit about it. Here it is. If it's okay, I'd love to just throw some questions at you and you see what you think. First off, there's a bolt here that's missing and the nut that captures it. Do you have that? Or can I just pick it up at Home Depot or something?
If your ultimate goal is to restore it or to bring it back to like it came off the factory showroom floor, then, that bolt, to be proper, should be cadmium plated. So it's basically, they don't sell bolts cadmium plated typically now, so you would take a regular bolt, then you strip it down and you have to replate it. So that's the proper way to do it. Now some guys will just stick a bolt in there and be happy and move on, which is perfectly fine as well. It just depends on what your ultimate goal is.
I think I'd like to get a cadmium plated bolt for that. The wire management across the board seems a little bit all over the place, and so I guess there's like these, looks like a washer but has a loop that carries the cable as well.
Yeah, we call those P clips because you hold them sideways, they look like the letter P, but basically there's little clips that we make that will hold the wires proper, and I can supply you with all that stuff, and I can show you some photographs or send you some photographs of some original bikes so you know what it's supposed to look like.
And little things like, this nut being super rusty and whatever. Yeah. Maybe I'll take it off. Maybe I'll wire wheel it. Maybe I won't, and just kind of leave it. I don't think there's a big deal.
No, I think it's fine. It's proper, and it adds character, See, like there's one there, but that's a plastic one. They're supposed to be metal.
That's the whole thing of these old bikes. It's like, what do you call this thing?
Yeah. It's just from experience.
Yeah, so I'm debating on what to do with this. I think I might take the side mirror off and then put basically LEDs that go on the side and run cables through so I have turn signals, because I'm a little worried about lack of visibility. Not to say that Georgia drivers aren't safe, because but
since you're doing something different, you just go whatever you like, right?
Yeah, so as far as this rotation dampener here, can you explain to me how this works exactly?
Yeah, so basically that goes all the way through the frame, and at the bottom side, there's a series of friction material and plates there, and it's connected to the frame, and then it's connected to the steering. So basically, as you turn that knob, the steering will get easier or more difficult. It's kind of a preference deal on how stiff you want the steering to be, and for
to turn like this, right?
Yeah, so like if you're driving down the highway, you can almost take your hands off the wheel, for example, if you had it really, really stiff. It's a rider preference type adjustment.
Am I missing a nut here?
There should be a cotter pin there to keep it from backing off. So basically right now, the way it is, if you turn that knob, you'll be able to just unscrew it and it'll all come apart.
Okay, one cotter pin.
Yeah, that's like 3 cents.
As you can tell, the wires come down and have these little connectors. And then like on the other side of the bike, there's wires that come down from under the tank. And I think this goes up to one of the main, and then there's this switch, whatever. So I could reconnect them, but then the other side of the wiring harness comes down this way and goes across the engine all the way down like this, all in front of everything. And then there's like this big plastic plug, and it's just like, here it is, right? And it goes down. And I'm just like, I would love to do a proper wiring harness.
Yeah, it will look cleaner for sure.
The next thing on my list of like, is this. And so the little research that I did, I noticed that these come off and there's actually elbows. So it makes that that turn, but these are straight. Which one is correct?
Yeah, this is totally just somebody just did to make it work. That's all incorrect.
Okay,
That's
yeah.
not proper at all.
I see somebody's plier work here. You can almost see the grooves in here. And I thought,
Yeah.
oh, what are these copper lines called?
Call them overhead oil lines. And basically what they do is they're the middle line that you see coming up through the cylinder. That's the feed line. And basically it distributes oil through the rocker shafts, and it lubricates the top end of the cylinder head and keeps everything lubricated. So that's what
little pinches like this cause for less fluid to go through, which then retards the amount of coolant you have down there, which isn't great.
I mean, it's not like it's the end of the world, but we can do better.
I did notice that unfortunately there's a bit of a chip out of this fin, which I guess happens right with time, and you know you don't come out of 70 years of life and not have a couple scars.
Yeah, unless if you end up ever having to rebuild the engine or something, then you fix it. But for now, just leave it.
All these bolts here that are octagon versus like standard. Yeah, these are incorrect, aren't they?
No, it should look like more like this top. See that top one there? They are. That's what they should look like.
Were they replaced because somebody stripped the threads and they went bigger on this aluminum case and just rammed them in there? And now if I get the right size, those threads won't bite and it'll be leaking oil. Like I wonder.
Well, a lot of times just because it's a flathead screw, they'll kind of mess them all up and then they're really not usable. So then they use these instead, not the right screw, but it's the same thread.
Would you leave it well enough alone, or would you make them all the same?
Unless there's a need to take it off, I wouldn't.
Let's leave it. Okay. Great. I know this hose is wrong and whatever, but it is kind of cool watching the oil flow back and forth.
Yeah.
And so that part I'm like, okay.
So go to your battery. I don't believe the battery is actually fastened in the bike. Yeah, so that's a problem.
You touch it and it just dances around. Like
so that's a problem.
And this is not a battery. This is just a battery case, right?
Right. The real battery's inside. There's a kit that you need to properly fasten that. It's a couple straps with little wing nut screws, and we can help you with that. And again, that's a safety issue. You can't ride the bike without the battery. The only thing holding it in is the wiring, right? That's not good.
No. Yeah, if you pull this out, these wires are just kind of like, as you can see.
Yeah, you kind of got a mess there with the wiring.
This is probably not the proper ground up here. I can't imagine it goes up.
No, it gets grounded lower. We usually ground it on that clutch mounting. That's where it usually gets grounded.
What is this device here?
That's the voltage regulator. It's not mounted in the correct location. Technically, it gets mounted to the side of the toolbox. I don't think it's a big deal where it's at for now.
I was seeing these, like, I lived in California for a long time. We have forest fires and stuff and fires in the hills. And this looks like the charred remains of someone's house. So I don't know how much longer these braces, if you will call them that, are going to hold out. And if I'm going to redo the wiring anyway, it might be a time to put this in the right place.
Yeah, which would basically, you'd have to drill a couple holes in the side of that thing, and there's a little mount, and it bolts to the side.
Okay.
I'll send you pictures of that.
The is it a transfer case, or what's this case
That's
called?
just the transmission cover.
When I kick down, the lever swings and doesn't come back up.
Yeah, so inside on that shaft of the Kickstarter, there's a spring, and the spring winds up, and then inside on the second case there's a pin that the spring attaches to. A lot of times that the mounting is not very structurally good there, and that pin will break off.
Here is what happened when he delivered the bike to me. So it came back up, right?
Yeah, by itself.
I usually get 3 just for good measures.
So it's working there.
Yeah, at some point in time it broke.
I already broke the bike.
If it makes you feel any better, it's very common. Very, very common. That's a very common problem.
I haven't taken this apart to look at it yet because I'm assuming I'll need to replace these gaskets once I do that.
Yep, you will.
It's just a quick story. So I get P on the phone. He's like, "What is the problem with your bike?" And I was like, "Oh, this is my problem." And he's like, "Okay, go to the main drive unit. Look under the bike." And I said, "I'm looking." I said, "But I have the kicker." He's like, "You're on the wrong side of the bike, son." I said, "Pete, I don't know what I'm doing."
Pete's awesome. You got to meet him someday. He is so unbelievable.
Good. He was so good. He goes, "What did I say? Say it back to me." And I'm like, "I'm clearly too stupid for this bike. I'm not able to do this."
Oh, it's a Pete. Yeah, you need to take it apart and see exactly what's going on there. And you can send me some pictures and I can kind of advise you on that.
Where you put your foot to push down, that joint does move a lot.
On the kicker pedal itself, on that thing?
Yeah. Right, so this guy here.
That's not the right bolt there.
Yeah, this bolt here is wrong.
That's incorrect.
And what happens is now it basically, because it should swing out and then you kick it, right? Like it
Yeah.
basically the action. But now it swings out and there's a whole bunch of play. No matter how much you tighten this down, it's never going to be right.
Yeah, you might need a new pedal there. Pedals over time they just get wore out. We'll try the bolt first, and if that doesn't fix it, we'll need to replace the kicker pedal.
This all works really well. You can see it, whatever. But I think initially it was black with like white types. You could see even better, right?
I have those.
That's just 2 screws, and then it would be much more visible, right?
Yeah.
I think I'd like to do that. And this is a shifter indicator.
Yep. I don't think that is original. I think somebody made that because it looks like the numbers are stamped. It's like a printed process. It's not a stamped thing. So that's probably someone just made that because the other one, who knows?
As I'm learning, so like this looks like it's the proper bolt and nut capture with the right iodized, but this is not.
Yeah, actually, that is not the correct nut. That's a.
Oh, this is also wrong.
That should just be a regular nut.
Interesting. So like this.
It should look like that. Yeah.
Right.
Just for your knowledge, like that bracket there is homemade. That's not
This
the
bracket.
It serves its purpose and it works just fine. And it's actually better because it raises the seat up. But it's not the way it came from the factory. I wouldn't change a thing. I'm just for your knowledge.
Not a proper Indian horn, but a vintage horn nonetheless. And I think it's kind of cool.
I like it. It's cool.
Apparently they can mount it on the side or the front, right?
Yeah. The early versions were like this.
Okay.
And then later on they moved it to the front.
I thought all this seems to all work fine and no big issues. These are the brackets.
Yep. Everything looks proper as well. So that's fine.
Yeah. Is this Fender cap original or is it something from a different?
It was basically they didn't really come with any, and so they had accessories. So like Indian made one that was an accessory, and then that's actually not. That's an aftermarket accessory that some other company bought that made them for the bikes that people would put on.
I love finding the clear coat drips.
Yeah.
So I do like the little luggage rack thing. That's really fun.
That was also a factory accessory thing. It should say Indian on the back side of it.
It does. It
Yeah.
does. Yeah. Carburetor seems nice. On my very first ride, I finally got it riding. Went to the top of the block, turned around, I looked down, and this little chrome bezel, like almost like horn, is laying on the road. I was like, parts of my bike are falling off as I'm driving around. So
now, technically, just for the record, the flow bolt's supposed to be flipped the other direction, but I wouldn't mess with it because it seems like it's working just fine there, but that's technically not where it belongs.
It is?
Yeah, that actually rotates. It should be on the inside between the oil tank and that air horn thing that you were just talking about. You'd have to take the carburetor off and loosen it up and turn it around, but I wouldn't mess with it. I would leave it. It's fine.
So these bolts that have these caps are incorrect, but the ones that are open like this are correct.
Yes. Yep, that's correct. Yep.
This
a petcock?
Yes. This is extremely difficult to turn.
Yeah.
Like it's not like you could turn it with your hands. I have to use pliers to turn it on.
Oh yeah, that's not good. That's not good. Again, that's not the factory one. I think it's Indian, but not vertical. It's like a different I think it might be like Indian Chief or something, which they make new ones you can buy. That would be a lot easier so you don't have to use a pair of pliers.
I see. And I don't think that the speedometer cable runs through here like this.
No, it goes more underneath the gas tank. I mean, it comes down through there, but it's not like that.
This is the generator, I'm thinking. Yep. And it seems to be okay. It seems working and whatever. Yep. I don't know. What's this black box do?
Okay, so this is a really interesting. These motorcycles had magnetos, and a magneto is unique in the sense that you don't need a battery to operate a magneto. It generates its own electrical field, which creates the spark. And
so cool.
But the problem is they didn't do a good job when they designed the coil, because the coil's internal of a magneto. It was a major problem on these bikes. They wouldn't start because there would be no spark because the coil and the magneto went bad. It was a notorious problem. 9 out of 10 of them, they go bad. Interestingly enough, what they did on this bike is they're not using the magneto in the sense of how it was intended. There's no spark plug wires there. So basically, all it's doing is opening and closing a set of points. If you follow the wiring, it goes all the way back to your toolbox.
Right.
And if you look inside your toolbox, there's a external coil. So they replaced the magneto with an external coil. So basically, when the engine rotates, the points open and close. It's timed properly. So when the points react, it will send a spark and the coil will energize and spark plugs will spark.
So these wires here go down.
They go to the spark plugs.
So
I totally wouldn't mess with it.
Okay.
Magnetos, they're a pain. The other problem is when you kick the bike over, they don't do a good job of creating spark at low RPM. So they're very difficult to start sometimes when they're not proper. Now, a lot of people will hide the coil underneath the gas tank. And this is just a different way of doing it, which I think is clever as well. I personally would probably reroute some of the wires a little bit. And when you
Is this just an extra fuse sitting here?
yeah, I have no idea what that's for. There's no fuses on this bike, so I don't know.
There is a thing of fuses though in this bike. Here are the fuses.
Oh yeah.
So
Yeah,
above the battery.
That's not original. Like they just did that.
Why do I need these fuses?
I mean, the original one didn't. I mean, most modern everything has fuses, right? Because in case there's a short or something. But there was so little that you really need it. Like no one really ran. They didn't have fuses back then, really.
But
if you wanted to use it as a toolbox and put stuff in there, you'd have to move the coil. There's a couple different options.
But you say not worth it. But if I have the gas tank off and rewiring anyway,
you could do it, yeah. And then actually, I mean, it was such a big problem that the last models of this bike, they eliminated the magneto and they mounted the coil kind of where the front horn would be. See how that strap is right there? Basically, they weld a plate there. The last version of that bike, they actually mounted the coil right there, which is very clean because now all the spark plug wires are short. The wiring from the magneto to the coil short, and you have excessive wiring the way they're doing it now, right? Because you're running all that wire, and you can eliminate a lot of that stuff.
That would be great. Water management essentially is my big note.
Yeah.
So
even I can show you some pictures of all this stuff. When you see the pictures come together for you,
it drives me crazy that like all these bolts are different sizes and lengths and everything.
Yeah, that's not proper. If the things drive you crazy, fix them. Now the lower ones look proper.
Oh, okay. So this and this is correct.
Yeah. See how they're not really sticking past.
Right. Yeah. So maybe just this one.
Yeah.
These two.
Yeah.
Maybe just
three. Yeah.
In this scenario, I would remove this altogether, or do I still keep it?
No, you still need that. You still need it just as is.
Great.
That doesn't change.
Okay. Neat. This is all fairly nice, I thought. Nothing.
Yeah, I would like to see a picture of the underside of that if possible.
Sure.
Okay, right there. That tells me that you have the cam. So basically when they made these, to connect the engine to the transmission, there's a chain, right? You got to have a chain, you got to drive it. Well, they had no way to tension the chain. So it was kind of like a bicycle where the chain would stretch. It would flop around in there and cause a lot of problems. And they're like, oh man, we can't have this because the chain's going to stretch. Well, so they made a tensioner kit. That's the sign that your bike has the tensioner kit. So that's good. Yeah, so that's the bolt that loads the tensioner to tension the chain. So when that's in there, that means you have it. So you're good. See the drain plug, the big hex nut. So that there is what they call the sump plug.
Okay.
So we found that thing is not really proper, and I've designed another one that flows more oil.
Great.
That kind of helps the bike. Kind of recommend everyone to do that upgrade.
So basically, I would take this nut off.
Yeah, and that's how you drain the oil.
How big is that nut?
Big. It's like 1.5 inches. I mean, Indian actually made a special tool to take them in and out, but like you said, any kind of wrench that will fit on it, that's all you really need.
Great. And while we're on this, oil filters, we saw a fuel filter. Is there an oil filter in this bike?
Well, that's kind of, when you take that off, you'll notice there's a screen in there. The way it is from the factory, they like soldered it in one place, and it's like you can't take it apart. So the one I will send you, you can actually take apart if you want to do and clean it. If you
wash it in gasoline or whatever.
You had to, yes.
Yeah. I was really excited to see that there's a center kickstand as well as a regular kickstand.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, it's real good to have. Now, one thing that's going to be a problem down the road at some point, it's fine for now, but you see how pointy that tooth is on the sprocket?
Yes.
It looks, it's hard to see in the picture, but it looks, it might be okay. I think it was the angle.
Okay.
But you'll notice they get really, really pointy. That means it's wore out, which is a pain to change them. But I think you're fine for now.
I like my Speedo. I think it's one of the older ones, according to the photographs I've seen.
Yeah, it's a nice one.
It says something on here, but I don't think it says Indian. It says Moto.
Moto lamp. That's proper. Yeah.
Okay.
That's original.
On the throttle, there's quite a lot of play. It's like play. And then when you finish playing, then you can tighten it down. And I noticed that this guy is just kind of dangling. Is it supposed to be mounted in here somehow? Or like, how is the tension? Like, I'm concerned about my throttle being adjusted properly. I just don't know.
Yeah, I mean, up there's really nothing that's all proper. It's all the stuff that you can do is back down on the carburetor side, which really all you can really do is there's a spring in there. That's just the way it is. It's a weird feeling compared to like a more modern motorcycle. Feels like the throttle will stay like wherever you hold it almost. It's not the best feeling in the world, but that's just the way they were back then. Right there. See, those can get adjusted upwards. One's the choke and one's the actual throttle. So the choke one's all the way down, but that front one, basically, you screw that up more, and that will take the slop away.
Okay.
And that
Okay.
should fix that problem.
I understand old things are like this, but this is not correct, even for like 1949, right?
Yeah, no, it shouldn't be that sloppy, no.
Yeah, because you see, like, what is this clamp for?
It just keeps the wire from, like, when you give it the throttle, so the whole wire doesn't move. So that kind of is like a stop, if you will. It's proper. There's nothing wrong there. Again, I think, when you look at the whole bike, everything's really good, except, the wiring is really only the big thing that I would want to really clean up, and it will really make a difference,
Looking at the gas cap, I go, oh, is this time to replace this? Is the gasket going here? Do I need to worry about that, or just like
Yeah, just clean it up and then put some oil on the rubber to keep it from getting brittle and dried up anymore. And it needs to vent, so that's why you have a spring system in there. Because when you screw it on there, it actually vents the gas tank.
All right, cool. I'll give it a clean. And then inside the gas tank, it is a bit rusty on the mouth, but inside the tank, it doesn't look terrible. Like,
It's fine. And you got the filter. I mean, that's actually really good for the year and everything. Like, that's not a big problem.
That's the inside of the cap by the kicker. I just didn't
That's
know.
how you adjust the clutch.
The clutch is impossible, by the way. To squeeze it, it is ridiculously hard. Like, I don't know that I can ride for more than 15 minutes. Like, you gotta.
Yeah, that's not correct. We at some point need to change the clutch plates out and the springs.
That's the real reason why I'm coming to you, was because I heard that you were the guy who had the kit. So I was like, wait, Wally makes the clutch plates things, and
basically the clutch pack needs to be a certain thickness to work properly. And a lot of times guys didn't know that, and their clutches would slip. So what they would do is they would just they'd make the spring stiffer and stiffer and stiffer. So they would say, oh, it's going to put more pressure on it. And what it does is it makes it impossible to ride because you can't actually push the lever in. So instead of fixing the real problem, they kind of jury-rig the problem. And it works, but it's not the correct way. It should not be that difficult.
And that's exactly what Pete said too, was like, 49. How many people have touched your bike? How many? A lot. So I was like, God,
He's yelling at you, yeah.
So clutch pack and springs, I think, is the order of the day.
Yeah, you'll need that.
And then I also need, if I'm taking that apart, I need the gasket for it as well, right?
Yep.
Is this key correct?
No, that's not the way they came, but that's cool. Like, it works.
It's a big old key that is where it would be if you advance forward, which is less cool, but visually it's cool looking.
Yeah, they did not look like that when they came.
I didn't think so, yeah.
Yeah.
I think I got my list, man. I think I'm feeling pretty good about all this.
Yeah, no, that's good.
Cool. Let me type this up, shoot you an email, and if you wouldn't mind giving me a price list for it.
Yeah.
And then, cool, this is great. And then I feel like I'll have my kit together, so when I do take it all apart, I don't want to work on the bike for the next year and a half,
I hear you.
Thanks, Wally. Thank you so much. I learned so much on this conversation. This is amazing.
No problem.
Like you said, looking at it just for what it is, it's a sweet little bike,
No, I love it. I love it.
Wally, thanks so much for your time.
All right, man. Take care. Nice chatting with you.
You too. Take care. Bye.